AITA for refusing to let my wife's brother move in with us, even though it might mean she stops talking to me. This all started about 3 months ago, and honestly, I still don't know if I'm being overly harsh or if I'm just standing up for myself for once. I, 36M, have been married to my wife, 34F, Jenna, for 6 years. We've been together for 8, and I would say we've had a pretty solid relationship overall. We don't fight often, we communicate well most of the time, and we generally see eye to eye on the big stuff: money, kids, future goals. That said, there's always been one recurring point of tension. Her brother, Kyle, 32M. Kyle is a lot. He's one of those guys who always seems to have a new thing going on, a new job, a new girlfriend, a new business idea. None of them ever last. Since I've known him, he's worked at maybe a dozen different places, been in and out of 2 MLM schemes, tried to start a food truck with no capital or culinary experience, and dated about 10 women, 3 of whom he proposed to within months. He's not a bad person, per se. He's funny, outgoing, and people tend to like him on the surface, but he's completely unreliable. He borrows money and doesn't pay it back. He crashes on couches for a week and stays for 3 months. He never takes accountability when things go wrong, and he somehow always has a sob story about why nothing is ever his fault. Jenna has always defended him. She sees herself as his protector since their parents were emotionally unavailable and borderline negligent. I get that. I really do. But it's gotten to the point where it feels like Kyle is her priority instead of our own home and stability. So here's what happened. 3 months ago, Kyle lost his apartment. Again. This time it was because he misunderstood the lease agreement and thought he had a 2-month grace period on rent. He didn't. He called Jenna in a panic, saying he had nowhere to go. She offered, without consulting me, to let him stay in our guest room just for a few weeks until he got back on his feet. Now, we have a 3-bedroom house, 1 master, 1 office for me. I work from home as a software engineer, and 1 guest room. I made it clear early in our relationship that I need a dedicated office. I work 9 to 10-hour days from my home, and my job is demanding. Losing the office would not only affect my productivity, but also my mental health. Jenna knows this and has always respected it. So she tells me Kyle's moving in next week, and I'm just standing there like, what? I told her flat out that I wasn't okay with it, that he could maybe stay for a weekend or 2, but I knew from experience that a few weeks with Kyle would become months. We fought. It wasn't a screaming match, but it was tense. She said I was being heartless, that Kyle needed family support, and that it wasn't like we had kids or a packed house. I told her that I wasn't comfortable living with her brother again. Yes, again, he'd stayed with us for a few weeks 2 years ago after a breakup and left the place a disaster. He didn't clean, didn't help out, and borrowed my car without asking. I told her she could help him find an extended stay motel or even split the cost of short-term Airbnb. But he couldn't live here. She started crying and told me I was putting money above family. I said I was putting us above enabling someone who refuses to grow up. She didn't speak to me for 2 days after that. Eventually, we had a long talk, and I thought we had compromised. She would help Kyle find a place, and he could crash on our couch for 1 weekend while he got sorted. He came over that Friday, and, no surprise, he brought a suitcase and a duffel bag. Jenna told me not to worry, that he was just being over-prepared. I tried to keep the peace and focus on my work. By the following Tuesday, he was still there. No job interviews. No apartment tours. He was sleeping in until noon, hogging the TV, and using up my coffee pods. I sat Jenna down and said, "This isn't working. He needs to leave this weekend." She blew up, said I was treating her brother like a stray dog, and that I had no empathy. I reminded her that we had agreed on 1 weekend. She said he just needed more time and accused me of trying to control her family. That's when I laid down the boundary. If Kyle didn't leave by Sunday, I would leave for a hotel until he was gone. She called my bluff. Sunday came, and Kyle was still lounging in his boxers watching Netflix at noon. I packed a bag and left, stayed at a Marriott nearby, and texted her that I'd be home when he wasn't. 2 days later, she said Kyle had gone to stay with a friend. I came back, and things have been tense ever since. She's been cold, distant, and barely talks to me unless it's about logistics. Last week, she told me she was rethinking our marriage because she can't be with someone who doesn't care about her family. I told her I do care about her family, but not to the point of sacrificing our marriage, our home, and my mental health for someone who refuses to help himself. She said I made her choose, and she doesn't forgive me for that. So now I'm sitting here wondering if I did make her choose. Maybe I could have been more patient. Maybe I could have compromised more. But I also know this isn't the first time Kyle has inserted himself into our life and disrupted things. I just finally said no. The irony is that Kyle is doing fine now. He's living with another friend, picked up a part-time gig, and posted on Instagram last week about how everything works out when you trust the universe. Meanwhile, my wife and I are barely speaking, and she's seriously considering leaving. AITA for standing my ground and refusing to let her brother move in, even though it might cost me my marriage? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot and motivates me to create even more amazing content just for you. Make sure to turn on notifications so you'll never miss out on a new video. I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for your support. It truly helps the channel grow. AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding because she didn't invite my wife. This whole situation feels like a bad dream I can't wake up from, and I honestly can't tell if I'm being stubborn or if I have a right to be angry. I, 35M, have been married to my wife, Lucy, 33F, for 6 years. We've been together for nearly a decade, and everyone in my family knows her extremely well. She's sweet, kind, and has made a genuine effort to be part of my family. My sister, Emily, 29F, used to like Lucy, or at least she acted like she did, but something changed in the past 2 years, and I still don't know what it was. Emily got engaged last summer to her fiancé, Tyler, 32M. The engagement was a big event, lots of pictures on Instagram, cute announcement videos, the whole deal. At the time, I congratulated her and told her Lucy and I were so excited for her. Emily seemed distant even then, but I chalked it up to stress. A few months later, we got an invitation to the engagement party. Correction, I got an invitation. It was addressed just to me. When I asked Emily why Lucy's name wasn't included, she mumbled something about keeping it small and immediate family only, which was weird because Tyler's sibling spouses were invited. So were several of Emily's friends' partners. I let it go, not wanting to stir anything. I went alone, and it was awkward. People kept asking where Lucy was, and I just said she had other plans. My mom gave me a funny look, but didn't say anything. Lucy was hurt, but she was understanding. She told me not to make a big deal out of it. Fast forward to this spring. Emily started planning the actual wedding, and she asked me to be a groomsman. Not the best man, but fine, I wasn't expecting that. She started assigning tasks to family members. My mom was helping with the decorations. My dad was doing some kind of speech, and I was supposed to help coordinate transportation for out-of-town guests. I agreed. A week later, the official wedding invitations went out. I opened mine, and again, only my name was on it. No mention of Lucy. I stared at it for a while, hoping it was a mistake, but when I called Emily, she casually said, "Yeah, we decided to keep the guest list really tight. Just close family." I told her Lucy is family. She said, "Well, technically, she's your family, not mine." That's when I lost it. I asked her what Lucy ever did to her to warrant this kind of exclusion. Emily got defensive and said she didn't have to explain every decision to me, and that she wanted her wedding day to be drama-free. I told her that the only drama was coming from her side, not Lucy's, and that if my wife wasn't welcome, then I wasn't either. That led to a massive argument. My parents got involved. My mom told me she understood my frustration, but begged me not to back out. She said it was just one day, and that Emily was under a lot of pressure. My dad told me that I was making this about myself and being immature. I sat Lucy down and told her everything. She cried, not because she wasn't invited, but because she thought she had done something wrong and had no idea what it was. That crushed me. I texted Emily and officially declined the groomsman role. I told her I wouldn't be attending the wedding unless Lucy was invited. She replied with a single sentence, "That's your choice." Since then, things have exploded. My mom is furious with me. She said she never thought I'd abandon family over something so petty. My dad won't talk to me at all. Emily hasn't contacted me since. Meanwhile, Tyler, the groom, actually reached out to me separately and apologized. He said he didn't agree with Emily, but didn't want to cause waves. I asked him if he knew why she didn't want Lucy there, and he just said, "It's complicated," and left it at that. I racked my brain over and over trying to figure out what complicated means. Lucy has always been polite to Emily. We've never had any fights or tension, not even subtle ones. There was one time, maybe a year and a half ago, when Lucy politely disagreed with Emily about something political during a family dinner, but it was really minor and no voices were raised. Still, that's the only possible thing I can think of. Now the wedding is 2 weeks away. I'm still not invited. Lucy is trying to be supportive, telling me to go without her if it'll help smooth things over. But I can't do that. I can't leave my wife out of a major family event for no reason. My parents keep calling and guilt-tripping me. My mom actually said, "You'll regret this when we're gone, and all you have left is your sister." That cut deep. I don't know how this became so ugly so fast. Some friends say I'm doing the right thing, standing up for my wife. Others say I should just go to keep the peace and deal with the hurt later. But to me, going would mean I'm okay with Lucy being treated like she's invisible. So, AITA for refusing to help with the wedding and not attending because my sister didn't invite my wife. AITA for not inviting my dad to my wedding because he didn't come to my high school graduation. Let me start by saying I, 25F, had a pretty complicated relationship with my dad, 47M. My parents divorced when I was 11 after years of what I describe as quiet resentment between them. No shouting matches or thrown plates, just this low, constant bitterness that colored everything. My mom, 46F, got primary custody, and my dad moved about 2 hours away with his new girlfriend, who became his wife 6 months later. At first, he'd visit every other weekend. But over the years, the visits got less frequent. He got a new job, had a kid with his wife, and suddenly it was like I was an optional part of his life. Calls turned into texts, and then even the texts started to feel more like check boxes he was ticking off. Hope school is going well. Happy birthday, kiddo. I still loved him, but the relationship faded into something more symbolic than real. My high school graduation was a big deal for me. I was valedictorian, had gotten into a great college, and honestly, I just wanted to see both of my parents sitting in the crowd smiling at me. I told my dad about it months in advance, reminded him twice in the week leading up to it, even saved him a seat with a sticky note. He didn't show up. No call, no text, just didn't come. I remember scanning the crowd from the stage while I gave my speech, trying not to let it distract me, but I couldn't help noticing the empty seat. Later, I called him and got his voicemail. He texted me the next morning saying something came up at work, and he didn't want to bother me on such an important day with an excuse. I didn't reply. We didn't talk for months. He eventually reached out around Thanksgiving that year. We talked a little, but it wasn't the same. The trust one had in him was just gone. I still saw him occasionally during college, maybe once or twice a year, but the relationship was distant. I stopped expecting anything from him. I stopped inviting him to school things. I stopped hoping. Fast forward to now. I'm getting married this summer to my fiancée, Jamie, 27M, who I've been with for 4 years. We're doing a small outdoor wedding, about 75 people. We both agreed we wanted people there who were actively in our lives. People who'd seen us grow together, who'd supported us, shown up for us. I invited my mom, my stepdad, who's been amazing, aunts, uncles, friends, coworkers. Jamie's family is coming in from out of state. When it came time to decide about my dad, I hesitated. I thought about the empty seat at my graduation. I thought about all the birthdays he forgot, the way he slowly drifted away, how I was always the one reaching out until I just stopped. I decided not to invite him. I didn't tell him immediately, just kind of avoided the conversation. But my half-sister, 11F, accidentally brought up the wedding during a FaceTime call with him and his wife. That's when the storm hit. My dad called me that night, furious. He said he had every right to be there, that he was still my father, that he loved me and wanted to support me. I told him he had years to support me and didn't. That I was tired of pretending we were close when we weren't. That I didn't want to feel obligated to share the most important day of my life with someone who couldn't even show up when I graduated high school. He got quiet for a moment, then told me I was being cruel and childish. That I was punishing him for a mistake he made years ago. That one missed event shouldn't define our relationship. He said I was being selfish and letting my mom poison me against him. I hung up on him. Now, his wife has been texting me, saying I'm hurting their daughter by excluding her dad. That he cries in their bedroom and feels like he's lost his child. That he wants to make it right, but I won't let him. Some extended family on his side have weighed in too. An aunt and a cousin messaged me saying weddings are about family, and even if he wasn't perfect, he deserves to be there. They say I'll regret this. My mom and Jamie are supportive. My mom told me she understands completely and has always known I'd have to make a hard choice when it came to him. Jamie says it's my call, and he wants me to feel safe and loved at our wedding, not stressed out trying to manage someone who hasn't been there for me in years. But now I'm second-guessing myself. Was I too harsh? Should I have at least had a conversation with him before leaving him off the invite list? Was I really punishing him for something that happened years ago, even if it hurt? I didn't think I'd feel guilty, but I kind of do. Not because I think he deserves to come, but because part of me still wants that dad I thought I had when I was a kid. I know he's not really that person anymore, if he ever was, but it still stings. So, Reddit, AITA for not inviting my dad to my wedding because he didn't come to my high school graduation. AITA for refusing to let my husband's adult daughter move in with us after she lost her job. I, 42F, have been married to my husband, Dan, 47M, for 6 years, and we've been together for 8. We each have kids from previous relationships. I have 2 sons, Kyle, 17, and Jacob, 15, and he has a daughter, Lila, 24. Dan and I have kept a mostly blended family. The kids don't all treat each other like siblings, but there's mutual respect. At least there was. Lila has never lived with us. She went straight from her mom's house to college, then got a job and stayed in that city, about 3 hours away. We've always had a decent relationship. I never tried to be her stepmom or anything close. I've always treated her like a guest when she visits. We've exchanged birthday gifts, been polite, had holiday dinners, but I wouldn't say we're close. Still, she's Dan's daughter, and I respected that. About a month ago, Lila was laid off. She worked in digital marketing, and her company downsized. According to her, she was one of the last ones hired, so first out. She couldn't afford rent anymore, so she asked if she could come stay with us for a bit while she figured things out. I didn't love the idea, but I didn't say no at first. Then I asked what a bit meant. She said she didn't know. Maybe a few months. I asked if she was looking for a job in our city, and she said no. She wanted to move to LA to chase some influencer marketing stuff. I asked if she had a plan. She said not exactly, but she figured she'd just live with us until she saved enough money to move to LA. That's when I said no. I told Dan that I didn't feel comfortable letting someone move into our house indefinitely without a real plan, especially not someone who wasn't looking to build a life here. I didn't want our home to become a launch pad for a dream that sounded unstable. We have 2 teenage boys with routines, privacy, school, and sports. Our house isn't big. We have 3 bedrooms, and my boys share one. Lila would need to sleep in the living room, or one of the boys would have to give up their space. That didn't seem fair. Dan was clearly upset, but didn't argue at first. He told Lila, and she was disappointed but understood. Or so I thought. 2 days later, I came home from work and found her sitting in our kitchen with her bags. Dan had driven to get her and brought her home, assuming I'd get over it once she was already there. I was furious. I told them both this was disrespectful and manipulative. Lila started crying and saying she didn't have anywhere else to go and that her dad told her it was fine. Dan looked like a deer in headlights. I pulled him aside and we argued for hours. I told him that we made decisions together, and he completely went behind my back. He said he felt guilty letting his daughter struggle, and he figured I'd soften up if I saw her in person. I told him I wasn't heartless, but I wasn't going to be guilted into appending our household for an adult who made a choice to chase a vague dream without a backup plan. He asked if we could just give her a month. I agreed, asterisk 1 month asterisk, but I was clear. She needed a job, she needed to contribute something, and she needed to be working toward actual independence, not just saving up to leave and hope LA worked out. That was 4 weeks ago. In that time, Lila has barely left the house. She sleeps in late, hangs out on her phone all day, and only started looking for part-time work when I reminded her of our agreement. She got one interview at a cafe and didn't get the job. She spends hours scrolling TikTok and talking about her brand. When I asked Dan if he was going to talk to her, he said she was adjusting and he didn't want to pressure her. I reminded him again of the timeline and told him this wasn't sustainable. The boys are irritated. Kyle can't practice his guitar because she's always napping on the couch, and Jacob can't have friends over. They're both annoyed and asking why she's even here when she's not really part of the family. Harsh, maybe, but not totally unfair. I told Dan this weekend that the month was up and it was time for Lila to start making plans to move out. He said I was being cold and impatient and that she wasn't ready. I reminded him that she wasn't ready because she hadn't tried. He said I was making her feel unwelcome and like a burden. I asked how else she was supposed to feel when she was acting like a burden and refusing to help herself. He told me I was punishing her for being lost. I told him I wasn't. She had every right to be lost, but that didn't mean we were obligated to host her indefinitely while she flailed. We're not a hotel. We're a family of four already living in a tight space. He said if the roles were reversed and it was one of my sons, I'd never throw them out. That's when I snapped. I told him my sons are minors. They're children. Lila is 24. If Kyle drops out of college and comes home to figure it out without a plan or a job, yes, I'd give him a timeline and expectations too. I wouldn't just let him sit on the couch and mope while someone else paid the bills. Dan said I was drawing a line in the sand and choosing my rules over his daughter's well-being. I said I was choosing boundaries, that we agreed on 1 month, and if he wanted to change that, he should have discussed it with me. Not gone behind my back, not hoped I'd soften, and not guilt-tripped me when things went exactly the way I said they would. He slept in the guest room, well, the office, last night and hasn't really spoken to me since. Lila is acting like a kicked puppy, doing the dishes and being sweet in a way that feels performative and almost strategic. The boys are walking on eggshells. The whole vibe in the house is off. Now I'm wondering if I was too harsh. Maybe I should have just let her stay longer. Maybe she needs more support, and this is how she gets her feet under her. But part of me feels like Dan and Lila took advantage of me, used my guilt and sense of fairness against me to get their way. And now I'm the villain for enforcing the boundary they agreed to. AITA for saying no to letting her stay longer. AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law hold my newborn after what she did in my baby shower. This has been eating at me for weeks now, and I'm starting to question if I overreacted. My husband and I welcomed our first child, a daughter, into the world 5 weeks ago. We're over the moon, even if we're running on fumes. We've been pretty private during the pregnancy for personal reasons, and that's part of what kicked off the whole situation. I, 29F, come from a tight-knit but relatively small family. My husband, 32M, on the other hand, has a much bigger one, and his family is extremely involved in each other's lives. That includes his younger sister, Grace, 27F. Grace is loud, dramatic, and always needs to be the center of attention. I've always tolerated her for the sake of peace, but she's rubbed me the wrong way more than once. When we announced our pregnancy, we did it quietly, just immediate family at a small dinner. No big gender reveal, no social media posts. My husband and I are both fairly private and just wanted to enjoy this experience without it turning into a spectacle. Grace, apparently, did not take well to that. She made passive-aggressive comments like, "Are you going to let us know when the baby's born, or just send a postcard a month later? And it's like you're ashamed to be pregnant or something." I brushed it off at the time, chalking it up to her being dramatic as usual. Fast forward to the baby shower, which my mom and sister organized with my input. We decided on a co-ed, low-key brunch at a small local venue. Grace was invited, obviously, and everything was going okay at first. About halfway through, when we were doing a very simple gift opening, nothing showy, Grace stood up and said, "Well, since we're all here, I have an announcement too." She then proceeded to announce that she was also pregnant. The room went dead silent. She wasn't even trying to be subtle. She actually pulled out a sonogram photo and waved it around. People started clapping awkwardly, and I just sat there, stunned. My husband looked furious but didn't say anything in the moment. I forced a smile and congratulated her, trying not to let it ruin the day. But let's be honest, it completely shifted the tone of the entire event. Suddenly, everyone was asking her questions, cooing over her announcement, and ignoring the gifts people had brought for our baby. Later that evening, I confronted her. I told her I thought it was incredibly disrespectful to hijack my baby shower for her own announcement. She rolled her eyes and said I was being hormonal and dramatic, and that it wasn't a big deal. She said she was just excited and thought it would be fun to share with the family while everyone was together. I told her it was selfish and immature. She stormed off in a huff and didn't speak to me again for weeks. After my daughter was born, Grace sent a text saying, "Congrats, can't wait to meet her." I responded with a polite thank you, and that was it. She kept pushing to come visit, but I wasn't ready. We were exhausted, trying to adjust, and frankly, I was still holding on to the resentment from the shower. Eventually, we planned a small family get-together at our place, just grandparents and siblings. Grace came with her husband. As soon as she walked in, she said, "Finally, I've been dying to hold my niece." I told her, gently but firmly, that we weren't letting anyone but grandparents hold the baby yet. That was partly true. Our daughter was still very young, and we were being cautious. But I also didn't want Grace holding her. Not after everything. She got this tight smile and said, "Really? So everyone else gets to, just not me?" I told her it wasn't personal. She scoffed and said, "Right. Not personal at all. Just conveniently the person you're still mad at." The rest of the visit was awkward. She barely spoke to me and kept making comments to her mom about how she hoped her child wouldn't be raised to be petty. My husband backed me up, but his parents told me later that Grace was really hurt and that I should consider being the bigger person. They said pregnancy hormones make people do weird things, and that Grace probably didn't realize how big of a deal her announcement would be. But that's the thing, she did know. She's done stuff like this before. At our engagement party, she made a huge deal about getting a new job and tried to turn the toast into a mini celebration for herself. At my bridal shower, she showed up 2 hours late in a white dress and made a fuss about how she didn't know it was inappropriate. There's a pattern here. She has a habit of making everything about herself. I know holding a baby isn't a right, and maybe I was petty. Maybe I'm holding a grudge. But it genuinely felt good to draw a boundary, for once, and not let her bulldoze over my moment. Now some family members are saying I'm being cruel, and that Grace is having a hard pregnancy and could use the emotional lift of bonding with her niece. My own mom thinks I was justified, but even she's starting to ask how long I plan on freezing her out. My husband is fully in my corner, but doesn't want this to cause a long-term rift with his sister. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law hold my baby because of how she acted at my shower? AITA for kicking my sister and her kids out after they trashed my house while I was on my honeymoon? My wife and I, both 30, got married 3 weeks ago. We've been together for 7 years, lived together for 4, and finally tied the knot after saving up for the wedding we really wanted. It was small but perfect, close friends and family, good food, and a week-long honeymoon in Greece right after. Everything felt like it was finally falling into place. Before we left, my older sister Rachel, 35, asked if she could house sit for us. She has 2 kids, 9 and 6, and recently got divorced. She said she could use a change of scenery for a week, and it would help her out a lot. She framed it like she'd be doing us a favor by taking care of the plants and keeping the house occupied. My wife was hesitant. We both know Rachel's kids can be a handful, but I felt bad turning her down. I've always been close with my sister, and she's been through a rough year. I agreed, and my wife reluctantly went along with it, mostly because we didn't want to start our honeymoon with an argument. We left a set of rules. No guests besides her and the kids, no sleeping in our bedroom, and absolutely no pets inside. She has a large dog, and we're both mildly allergic. We even stocked the fridge with groceries and left gift cards for takeout in case she didn't want to cook. The house was spotless when we left. We also installed a couple of security cameras, just one at the front door and another in the living room, mostly for peace of mind. We had a fantastic honeymoon. The only red flag was on day 3 when I noticed the living room cam had been turned off. I messaged Rachel, and she claimed the Wi-Fi had gone down temporarily and she'd fix it. It came back online a few hours later, so I didn't think much of it. When we got home, we were shocked. Our house was a complete mess. Not just untidy, but trashed. Crumbs and sticky stains on the couch, food wrappers everywhere, dirty dishes piled in the sink and all over the counter, random toys scattered across every room, crayon drawings on the walls in the hallway and kitchen. Our guest bedroom, which they were supposed to stay in, looked like a bomb went off. Bed sheets ruined, juice spilled on the mattress, and what looked like peanut butter smeared on the headboard. But the worst part? Our bedroom. They'd clearly been in there despite us, specifically asking them not to. Our white comforter had chocolate stains, the closet was rifled through, and one of my wife's expensive perfumes was half empty. Someone had clearly been sleeping in our bed. There were even snack wrappers on the nightstand. And despite the no pets rule, we found dog fur everywhere. On the couch, the rugs, even in our bed. I called Rachel immediately and demanded an explanation. She sounded annoyed more than apologetic and said, "It's not that bad. You're exaggerating." She claimed the kids must have gotten into the bedroom while she was showering and that the dog only came in once or twice. She also admitted she invited a few friends over for a play date, even though we had clearly said no guests. My wife was livid. She tried to be the bigger person, but was now furious, especially about our bedroom and the damage to some of her stuff. We told Rachel she needed to come clean the house immediately and pay to have the rugs and furniture professionally cleaned. She said she couldn't afford it and that we were being dramatic over a little mess. That's when I snapped. I told her I wanted her out of our house within the next 2 hours. She protested, said she didn't have anywhere else to go right now and the kids would be upset. I told her that was not my problem and that she had completely disrespected us, our home, and our boundaries. My wife backed me up and started gathering up Rachel's things while I called a cleaning service to come next day. Rachel left, but not quietly. She sent me a long text calling me heartless, saying she thought we were family and that I had no empathy for a struggling single mom. My parents later chimed in, saying I overreacted and that I should have been more understanding. My mom even said, "Kids will be kids," and accused me of choosing my wife over my own sister. I told them this had nothing to do with picking sides and everything to do with respecting our home. Now, I'm being guilt-tripped by most of my family, who are saying I should have handled it privately and not kicked her out so suddenly. But a few friends have said I did the right thing and that Rachel took advantage of my kindness. It's been 2 weeks. Rachel still hasn't apologized, and I've had to block her on social media because she started posting vague things like, "Some people only love you when you're useful to them." My parents keep trying to mediate, but I'm honestly done for now. I don't want people in my life who think it's okay to trash my home and then play the victim when called out. But now I'm wondering, was I too harsh? Should I have handled it differently? My wife says I should stop doubting myself, but the constant family pressure is starting to wear me down. So, AITA for kicking my sister and her kids out after they disrespected our house while I was on my honeymoon. AITA for refusing to let my brother bring his service dog to my wedding, even though I know it helps with his PTSD. So, a bit of backstory first. I, 30F, am getting married to my fiancée, Max, 33M, in August. We've been together for 6 years, engaged for 2, and after many delays due to finances and pandemic-related issues, we finally have the wedding of our dreams lined up. The venue is this gorgeous, old estate house in the countryside. Think manicured gardens, winding stone paths, chandeliers in every room. It's everything I ever wanted. We've been planning this day down to the tiniest detail. Now, my brother, Caleb, 28M, is a former Marine. He served 2 tours and was medically discharged after sustaining a traumatic brain injury and developing severe PTSD. He's had a really hard time adjusting back to civilian life. A few years ago, he was matched with a service dog named Ranger, a big German Shepherd trained to help him cope with anxiety, flashbacks, and night terrors. Ranger is amazing. He can sense when Caleb is about to have a panic attack and interrupts it. He helps wake Caleb from night terrors, and he even creates space for him in crowds when Caleb is overwhelmed. Honestly, I think that dog saved my brother's life. That being said, when we were finalizing the guest list and special accommodations, I had a conversation with Caleb. I told him I really, truly wanted him at the wedding. He's my only sibling, and despite everything, we remained pretty close. But I also told him that we were requesting no pets at the venue, including service animals. Before anyone jumps on me, I understand that legally service dogs aren't considered pets. I do. But the venue we chose has a strict no animals policy, including service animals, due to the fact that the property has a lot of delicate antiques, priceless rugs, and very strict insurance guidelines. When we first signed a contract with the venue, we asked about this because we knew it might be an issue. They were polite but firm. No exceptions, even for service animals. Apparently, they've had bad experiences in the past. One was a dog, not a service animal, that ruined a 200-year-old carpet. Another incident involved someone claiming their dog was a service animal and ended up causing damage to one of the furniture pieces. Since then, they changed their policy entirely. We debated it, but ultimately I decided the venue was worth it. It's not just about aesthetics, it's symbolic for me. My parents renewed their vows there when I was a teenager, and it's the one place I've always dreamed of getting married. So, I explained this to Caleb. I told him I would love for him to be there, but he would have to come without Ranger. I offered a few options. I'd pay for a nearby hotel for him and Ranger, so he could step away when he needed to. I offered to hire a trained support companion for the day who could help him cope in moments of stress. I even suggested we do a live stream of the ceremony just for him in case it felt like too much to be there without Ranger. He was clearly hurt. He didn't yell or make a scene, but he said something like, "You're asking me to leave behind the one thing that makes me feel safe just so you can have your fairy tale." He told me it felt like I was choosing a building over him. That really stung because I've always tried to be supportive. I've driven him to therapy appointments, helped him apply for benefits, and let him live with me for 6 months when he had nowhere else to go. Since then, things have gotten tense. He told my parents, who are now firmly on his side. My mom called me in tears, asking why I was discriminating against my own brother. My dad, who is usually quiet in these situations, told me he might not come if Caleb doesn't feel comfortable attending. Max's parents are trying to stay out of it, but even they suggested I consider a different venue or date. Caleb's girlfriend, who I don't particularly get along with, posted something passive-aggressive on Facebook about families who prioritize aesthetics over accessibility, and I'm fairly sure it was aimed at me. I've been really torn. I understand Caleb's position, and I absolutely sympathize with how hard things are for him. But this day is also important to me. It's something I've envisioned since I was a teenager. I'm not asking him to be uncomfortable for the entire weekend, just a few hours of the ceremony and reception. I didn't think I was being unreasonable by trying to meet him halfway. Now, though, people are starting to decline the RSVP because of the drama. A couple of my cousins have said they're siding with Caleb, and even one of my bridesmaids backed out because she said she felt uncomfortable supporting an exclusionary event. I feel like everything is spiraling. Max has been supportive, but even he's admitted he's nervous that this will damage my relationship with my brother permanently. And I'm scared it already has. Some of my friends have said I'm being a bridezilla. Others said it's my wedding and I shouldn't have to compromise. I genuinely don't know anymore. I want my brother there, but I also don't want to give up the one place that's ever felt magical to me. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my brother bring his service dog to my wedding even though I know how much he relies on him. AITA for refusing to let my sister and her kids move into my home after she lost hers. I, 34 am, have always tried to be the good guy in my family. I'm not perfect, but I've helped out when I could. I'm the oldest of 3, my sister Jane, 31F, and our younger brother Luke, 28M. Jane has always been kind of the wild card of the family. She's never really settled down or held a stable job, and she's always been pretty impulsive, even when she became a mom. Jane has 3 kids, 10M, 7F, and 4M. All have different dads. None of the dads are involved anymore. One's in jail, one moved out of state and ghosted her, and the third she refuses to talk about. I've always tried to be there for her kids in small ways, birthday gifts, taking them to the zoo once or twice, just generally trying to be a good uncle. But I've kept boundaries because Jane has a habit of over-relying on people until they snap. My wife, Sarah, 33F, and I bought our home 4 years ago after a lot of saving. It's not huge, but it's comfortable. We've got a guest room and a home office. Sarah works remotely, and we've been trying for a baby for a while. I mention this because it ties into the whole situation. 3 months ago, Jane called me crying. She'd just been evicted from her apartment. From what I gathered, she'd stopped paying rent 3 months before that. She claimed her hours got cut at work, but when I gently asked for more info, she dodged. I offered to help her find a short-term rental and even offered to pay the deposit, but she said she couldn't afford anything, even with help. She asked if she and the kids could come stay with us for a little while. I asked how long a little while was, and she got defensive. She said, until I get back on my feet, but couldn't give any kind of time frame. I told her I'd talk to Sarah. Sarah immediately said no. Not in a cold way, but firmly. She reminded me of Jane's history, how she stayed with friends or relatives before and a little while turned into a year or more, and those situations ended in drama. Sarah also pointed out that we've been working so hard to create a stable home environment, and this would upend all of it. I agreed with her. I've watched Jane burn bridges over and over again, always blaming other people. I didn't want to become the next person she used up, so I called Jane back and told her we couldn't let them stay with us, but I'd help her pay for a motel for a couple of weeks and help her get in touch with social services. She was livid, said I was abandoning her, that I didn't care about my nieces and nephews, that I was letting them be homeless. She guilt-tripped me hard, and when I didn't back down, she hung up on me. That night, my mom called furious. She said she couldn't believe I'd turn away family in need, especially innocent children, and that Sarah was turning me into a selfish, heartless man. I told her I wasn't okay with letting someone with a history of financial irresponsibility and boundary issues move in indefinitely, especially when Sarah and I were trying to plan for our own child. Mom said that was no excuse and that if I didn't let Jane stay, she and the kids would be sleeping in their car. That really messed with me. I ended up calling around and found a family shelter that had an opening. I offered again to help Jane move in and even pay for a few extra nights in a hotel until the space became available. She refused, said it was degrading and that she wasn't some charity case. For the next few weeks, she couch surfed with a few friends, but eventually burned those bridges too. She did end up staying at the shelter, briefly. Then she left, claiming it was too restrictive. Since then, she's bounced around, and from what I hear through the family grapevine, the kids have missed a lot of school. She's not working steadily, and she refuses to take any real assistance. Every so often, I get a passive-aggressive text or a screenshot of something her kids want for school or a birthday, like I should just send money. My brother Luke, who lives in a tiny apartment and works a low-wage job, recently took in the oldest kid temporarily, just so he could have some stability and not miss more school. Jane flipped out, accusing him of trying to steal her kid and that everyone is against her. The guilt is eating at me. I still stand by my decision, but I also feel like crap. I think about those kids, how they didn't choose this, how their lives are chaotic through no fault of their own. But I also know if I'd said yes, I don't think Jane would have ever left. And my marriage, my sanity, and my future would have taken the hit. Sarah and I are still trying for a baby, and adding 3 children and their volatile mother into our home would have been overwhelming. Still, when I told a few friends about it, the reactions were mixed. Some said I did the right thing by protecting my home and relationship. Others said I should have at least taken them in temporarily, gotten them through the worst part, even if it was just for a month. One person said, "You're letting kids suffer to teach your sister a lesson," and that one has been rattling around in my head ever since. So now I don't know. I feel like I was choosing between protecting the life I've worked for and being the person my family needed in a crisis. I keep telling myself that boundaries are important, that enabling someone doesn't help them, that offering help in other ways was still compassionate. But at the end of the day, those kids are bouncing around unstable situations, and I had a room. I just didn't open the door. AITA, Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my sister bring her service dog to my wedding, even though she's legally allowed to. I, 29F, am getting married in June to my fiancé, Nate, 32M. We've been together for 5 years and got engaged last summer. Wedding planning has been a mix of stressful and exciting. And honestly, I thought everything was going pretty smoothly until a major conflict came up involving my younger sister, Cara, 26F, and her service dog, Max. Cara was diagnosed with severe PTSD after a traumatic car accident 3 years ago. Since then, she's done an incredible amount of work to get back to some level of stability and normalcy. About 1.5 years ago, she got Max, a golden retriever trained to help her navigate panic attacks and grounding during flashbacks. Max is a certified service dog and genuinely makes a huge difference in her life. I want to be very clear that I admire her strength and have supported her through her healing journey. But here's where the issue comes in. Nate has a severe dog allergy, not the kind where he just sneezes a little. I'm talking full-on respiratory reaction, puffy eyes, hives, sometimes even difficulty breathing. He carries an EpiPen and has had to go to the hospital a couple of times in the past after accidental exposure. We don't have pets, and we're extremely careful when visiting other people's homes, making sure they clean beforehand if they have dogs. It's not something we can afford to be casual about. We chose a venue that is indoors and relatively small. It's a restored old library that's been converted into an event space. It has gorgeous old wood floors, a vaulted ceiling, and antique bookshelves. It's also climate-controlled, which was important to us, given that it can get pretty hot in June. The venue allows service animals, which is totally reasonable and required by law, but the issue is Nate's health. When Cara RSVP'd, she wrote that she would be bringing Max. I called her privately, not to start an argument, but just to explain the situation and see if we could find a workaround. I told her how serious Nate's allergy was and that we'd love for her to come, but that Max might trigger a dangerous reaction. I even suggested that maybe she could come with a friend or our cousin who knows some grounding techniques and could help her if something happened. I also offered to pay for a hotel nearby, so she'd have somewhere to go if she felt overwhelmed during the ceremony or reception. Cara was immediately upset. She said that asking her to be without Max was like asking a person to leave their wheelchair at home, that it was illegal to refuse a service dog access, and that she thought I, of all people, would understand how vital Max was to her safety. I tried to explain again that this wasn't about not believing Max is important or not respecting her disability. It was about Nate's health and the fact that being in an enclosed space with a dog could trigger a severe reaction. The conversation ended with her saying she needed time to think about whether she could even attend. Later that night, my mom called me, furious. She said I was discriminating against Cara and that I was putting Nate's inconvenient allergy over my own sister's legitimate needs. I told her that Nate's allergy isn't just inconvenient. It could be life-threatening. My mom said that if Nate's health is that fragile, maybe he shouldn't be at a crowded event either, and that Cara has just as much of a right to attend her sister's wedding as my fiancé does. Since then, the situation has spiraled. My aunt called to say she's sickened by how I'm treating Cara. My dad is trying to stay neutral, but said he's disappointed in me. My older brother took my side, saying he wouldn't want anyone risking a medical emergency just for the sake of appearances, but he's in the minority. I've even had a couple of Nate's family members ask if we could rent an air purifier or rearrange the seating so that Max can be far enough away, but the venue is small and fully enclosed, and the air circulates throughout. We checked with Nate's allergist, who said that even with purifiers, the risk would be very high and not worth it. I feel completely stuck. I love my sister, and I want her at my wedding more than anything. But I also can't ask my future husband to risk anaphylaxis on his own wedding day. Some people have suggested we just get married somewhere else, somewhere bigger or outdoors, but that would mean canceling our venue and deposits, rebooking everything, and losing a lot of money that we don't have. We booked this venue over a year ago and have built the entire day around it. Cara texted me a few days ago, saying she was sorry for blowing up, but that she still feels hurt and rejected. She said Max is a part of her, and without him, she doesn't feel safe or whole. I told her I understood, and that I really hoped she would still come, but I wouldn't budge on Max attending. She hasn't responded since. Now the wedding is about 6 weeks away, and the tension in the family is reaching a boiling point. My mom is saying she might not come either out of solidarity with Kara. My aunt has already said she won't. It started to feel like the joyful wedding we planned is turning into some kind of symbolic battleground, and I hate it. I just don't know what else I could have done. I've tried to accommodate her without compromising Nate's safety. I've offered alternatives, including paying for help and support for her during the event. But everyone seems to think I should just suck it up and let Max come, even if it means Nate could end up in the ER, or worse. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister bring her service dog to my wedding, even though she's legally allowed to bring him. AITA for telling my sister she's not welcome in my home after what she did to my daughter. I, 38M, am a single dad to my daughter, Claire, 13F. Her mother left when Claire was 5, and while it's been tough, I've done my best to raise her in a home that's safe, open, and supportive. My sister, Laura, 41F, lives about an hour away and has always had a rocky relationship with me, though we've kept in touch over the years. We've had our disagreements, but she's still family, and I've tried to be the bigger person. Laura and I were raised by very strict parents, controlling, religious, and more concerned with appearances than actual emotional support. I broke from that as I got older. Laura, on the other hand, seemed to lean harder into their beliefs as she got older. She married a man from our old church and raised her kids, 15M and 11F, in a very similar environment to how we grew up. Think no Halloween, no worldly music, and everything centered around God and Scripture. I don't judge her for raising her family how she sees fit. To each their own. But that tolerance has not always gone both ways. Claire is creative, a little shy, and she's recently started exploring her identity more openly. Last fall, she came out to me as bisexual, and I told her how proud I was of her and that I love her unconditionally. She's also been experimenting with clothes and makeup, finding a style that feels like her own. I encourage her to be authentic, so long as she's safe and kind to others. Laura, however, doesn't see it that way. A few weeks ago, I invited Laura and her kids to stay with us for a long weekend. It was spring break for the kids, and I thought it'd be a good opportunity for the cousins to bond. Claire was hesitant, knowing how judgmental Laura can be, but I reassured her that our home is our space, and no one would make her feel small here. The first day went okay. Laura was cordial, a bit stiff, but polite. Her kids and Claire played video games together and had pizza that night. Things seemed fine. The second day is when things started to go sideways. Laura made comments at breakfast about Claire's outfit, a flannel, some black jeans, and eyeliner. She asked if Claire was trying to look like a boy, and if this was just a phase. I cut her off, firmly but calmly, and told her that Claire can dress however she wants in our house. Laura backed off, but not without giving me a look like I'd just condoned arson. That night, while I was out grabbing groceries and snacks for movie night, something happened. Claire didn't say much when I got home, but she was unusually quiet and went straight to her room. Later that evening, I found her crying in her bed, holding a little shoebox she keeps letters and sketches in. I asked what happened, and she hesitated, but eventually told me everything. While I was gone, Laura apparently went into Claire's room to talk. According to Claire, the conversation started with Laura saying she was worried about her soul and how she was choosing a path away from God. When Claire tried to change the subject, Laura pushed harder, telling her that being bisexual was unnatural and that God could fix her if she prayed hard enough. Claire asked her to leave her room, and that's when Laura noticed the box. She opened it without permission and found some drawings Claire had made. Some were of girls holding hands, one was of a pride flag, and there were a few diary-like entries Claire had written. Laura called it evidence of spiritual confusion, and without asking, took some of Claire's drawings and ripped them up in front of her. I was livid. I didn't even confront Laura right away. I went straight to Claire and made sure she was okay. I sat with her for hours and reassured her that nothing Laura said was true. that she is perfect exactly as she is, and that I would always protect her. The next morning, I told Laura and her kids to pack their things and leave. I said that what she did was unacceptable and that she violated the most important rule in our home: respect and kindness. She tried to defend herself, saying she was just trying to help Claire and that it was out of love. I told her that love doesn't involve tearing someone down or destroying their things. She left in a huff, dragging her kids behind her. Since then, she's been telling our extended family that I kicked her out for her beliefs and that I'm brainwashing my daughter. Some of my older relatives have reached out to me, expressing concern that I'm being too sensitive and that Laura meant well. Others have stayed silent, which I think says enough. Claire's doing okay now. She's back to drawing, and she said she felt safe again after Laura left. But I've noticed she's more reserved, especially around family. I hate that this one visit set her back, even a little, and now I'm questioning whether I should have just gritted my teeth and kept the peace for Claire's sake. But I also feel like that would have sent the message that what Laura did was tolerable. Still, part of me wonders if I went too far. Family is messy, and while I want to protect my daughter, I also don't want to teach her that cutting people off is always the answer. But maybe this was one of those times where a line needed to be drawn. So, AITA for telling my sister she's not welcome in our home after what she did to my daughter. AITA for not giving my sister my wedding dress after she said I didn't deserve it. I, 28F, recently got married to my amazing husband, 30M. Our wedding was beautiful, everything I dreamed of, and it went off without a hitch. We had a small ceremony with close family and friends, and it was everything I could have hoped for. One of the most special parts of the day was my wedding dress. It was my late mother's, and I had it preserved and cleaned before the wedding. Wearing that dress made me feel like she was there with me. Now, a little backstory. I have a younger sister, Clara, 25F, who has always been a bit dramatic. She's not the easiest person to get along with, and we've had our fair share of disagreements over the years. We used to be close when we were younger, but as we grew up, it became clear that Clara tends to make everything about herself. She's always had this need to be the center of attention, and if she doesn't get her way, she could be pretty manipulative. When it came time for my wedding, I was really clear with Clara about my plans for the dress. It was a huge deal to me, and I made it known that it was something I wanted to keep for myself, not just as a memento of my mother, but also because I didn't want to give it up or have it altered in any way. Clara, however, had other ideas. She's been talking about her wedding for years, and every time we had a family gathering, she would hint at how excited she was for when she finally got married and how she'd love to wear a dress just like mine. At first, I brushed it off, thinking she was just being overly dramatic, but I started to get uncomfortable with how much she was bringing it up. She'd tell me things like, I could wear your dress when I get married. You don't need it, and I bet it'd look amazing on me. I knew she was being serious, but I thought it was just her trying to get me to offer it to her. I'd politely tell her that it was a family heirloom, and I wasn't planning on parting with it. The more I said no, the more insistent she became. It started to feel like I couldn't do anything without her making it about herself, and I began to dread our conversations. The day before my wedding, Clara cornered me in the living room. She said, you're being really selfish about the dress. It's just a piece of clothing. Mom would want me to wear it when I get married, and I'm sure you'll never use it again. Why can't you just let me have it? I was completely taken aback. I told her that it wasn't just a piece of clothing to me. It was a connection to our mom, and I had always planned to keep it. I told her that I didn't want her to wear it for her wedding because it was too important to me. Claire didn't take that well. She stormed out of the room, and I thought that would be the end of it. The wedding itself was perfect. My dress fit beautifully, and I felt incredible wearing it. It felt like I had a piece of my mom with me throughout the day, and that was priceless. But the drama didn't end there. A few days after the wedding, Clara came over to my house. She was in tears, saying I was being cruel and unfair. She told me that I was ruining her future wedding by not letting her wear the dress, and that I didn't deserve to keep it. She said that since I was married, I would never need it again, and she was more deserving of it because she hadn't even had a wedding yet. She kept saying things like, "You've already had your day, so why not let me have mine?" It felt like she was really pushing the idea that my wedding and my relationship with our mom didn't matter as much as her dream wedding, and I just wasn't having it. I told her again that I wasn't giving her the dress, and that it was staying with me because it was my personal connection to our mother. At that point, Clara's tears turned into anger. She accused me of being selfish and of hoarding something that was meant to be shared. She said I was being childish and that I didn't know how to put family first. She even went so far as to say I wasn't a good sister and that I was acting like I was more important than her. The whole situation left me feeling drained and upset. I wasn't asking her to not get married. I wasn't telling her she couldn't have her dream wedding. I was just asking for her to respect my wishes. But she seemed to think that her want for the dress somehow outweighed my need to keep it. I haven't spoken to her since that argument, and I'm not sure if I made the right choice. I've heard from some of our relatives that Clara has been telling everyone that I'm a selfish, entitled person for not letting her have the dress, and they're all making me feel like I'm in the wrong. Some have said, "It's just a dress. Why can't you let her have it for her wedding? You've already had your moment." But others have said I'm justified, that it's my decision, and that Clara is being unreasonable. I'm honestly really conflicted because I love my sister, and I know this wedding thing is a big deal for her, but I also know how much that dress means to me. It's not just a piece of clothing. It's a part of my memories of our mother, and I'm not sure how to balance that with the pressure from my sister. So, AITA for not giving my sister my wedding dress after she said I didn't deserve it. AITA for not attending my sister's wedding because of her treatment of my daughter. I, 35M, have a 10-year-old daughter, Emily, from my previous marriage. My sister, Kate, 28F, is getting married in a few weeks, and recently, things have gotten a little tense between us. I'll try to give you some background so you can understand where I'm coming from. When Emily was younger, her mother and I went through a pretty nasty divorce. It wasn't messy or anything like that. There was no infidelity, no abuse, just a lot of arguing and ultimately realizing we weren't right for each other. Throughout that time, my sister Kate was very supportive of me. She'd take me out for drinks, offer advice, and always checked in on how I was doing, which was comforting because my parents were not the most emotionally available people. Kate and I are close, or at least I thought we were. However, as time went on and I started dating again, things started to shift. About 5 years ago, I met my current girlfriend, Sarah, 33F, and we hit it off right away. Sarah has been great with Emily, and the two of them have an amazing relationship. Sarah doesn't have any children of her own, but she loves Emily like her own, which means a lot to me. We got engaged last year, and now we're planning our wedding for next year. Here's where things start to get a little complicated. Kate never really warmed up to Sarah. At first, I thought it was just a matter of Kate needing time to adjust, but over the years, her attitude hasn't changed. She's always polite, but there's this underlying tension whenever we're together. It's especially noticeable during family gatherings like holidays, birthdays, etc. She never says anything outright, but I can tell by her body language and the subtle comments she makes that she's not a fan of Sarah. For instance, at our last family Christmas dinner, she made a comment about how it's nice that Sarah's so into Emily, but it's weird how she acts like she's the mom sometimes. I didn't really think much of it at the time, but it's been building up. The final straw for me was when Kate started making comments about Emily. For example, a few months ago, we were at a family gathering and Emily accidentally spilled a drink on the couch. She was really upset about it, but instead of comforting her or offering help, Kate snapped at her, saying, "You're so clumsy. How do you not know better by now?" I was furious. Emily is still a child, and I've never heard Kate speak to her like that before. I immediately stepped in, told Kate that was uncalled for, and took Emily upstairs to calm her down. I brought it up to Kate afterward, and she apologized, saying she was just frustrated. But this wasn't the first time she'd acted this way, and it wasn't just about Emily's behavior. For instance, when Emily got straight A's on her report card, Kate barely acknowledged it, whereas if one of her friends' kids did something similar, she'd make a huge deal out of it. It just felt like there was this constant undercurrent of negativity toward my daughter, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. Around the time that all of this was happening, Kate started planning her wedding, and of course, I was expected to be a part of it. She wanted me to be there for her on her special day, and I was happy to do so. But things started to feel off when she told me that Sarah and Emily were invited to the wedding, but Emily would be expected to sit at a kid's table far away from the main event. I wasn't thrilled about that, especially since Emily had been close to Kate growing up, and I didn't think she deserved to be treated that way. But I thought, okay, maybe I'm just overreacting. It's her wedding, and if she wants to have a kid's table, it's not the end of the world. Then, the real kicker came when Kate told me that she wasn't comfortable with Emily being a part of any of the wedding photos or being included in the bridal party. She said she didn't want any distractions, and that she was going to focus on her and her fiancé's special moment. I was taken aback because, over the years, Emily had always looked up to Kate, and I thought she would want to have her involved. I asked Kate why she felt that way, and she said something along the lines of, "I don't want this to feel like a family reunion, and I just want my friends in the pictures." At that point, I was done. It felt like my sister had no respect for me, my relationship with Sarah, or my daughter. I tried to keep calm, but I told Kate that I wouldn't be attending the wedding if she was going to treat Emily like an outsider. I explained that Emily was my priority, and if Kate couldn't see how her actions were hurtful, then I couldn't be there to celebrate her day. Kate was absolutely livid. She told me I was being unreasonable and that I was letting my personal issues get in the way of supporting her. She said I was overreacting and making everything about me. The rest of the family, especially our parents, have been on her side, telling me I should let things go and stop being so dramatic. Now, I'm really torn. I want to support my sister, but I also want to stand up for Emily and not let her feel rejected or unloved by her aunt. I feel like I'm being put in the middle of a situation where I'm supposed to choose between my daughter and my sister, and no matter what I do, someone is going to be hurt. I don't want to cause any drama, but I also don't think I can just ignore how Kate has been treating Emily. So, AITA for deciding not to attend my sister's wedding because of how she's treating my daughter. AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law's kids stay at my house after they broke my stuff. 29F, live alone in a modest but cozy house that I bought a few years ago. It's my little sanctuary, and I've worked really hard to make it a place where I feel comfortable and at peace. My family and friends know that I take great pride in my home, and I'm very particular about keeping it clean, organized, and well-maintained. My sister-in-law, Megan, 35F, has 2 kids, Aiden, 8, and Emily, 5. I've never been super close with Megan. We get along well enough, but there's always been some tension between us. I'm not sure why, but she's always kind of been the type to be a bit dismissive of boundaries. Her kids are well-meaning, but they're very energetic and a bit unruly. Megan doesn't always keep them in check, which can make things interesting, to say the least. A few months ago, Megan asked me if I could watch Aiden and Emily for the weekend because she and her husband were going away for a short trip. I initially hesitated because I've never really had kids stay at my house for any extended period of time, and the thought of my space being disrupted made me nervous. But I figured it'd be a nice gesture, and I'd probably survive a weekend. So I agreed. I set some ground rules before they arrived. I told Megan that I'd be happy to have them over, but I wanted to make sure they respected my house. I was upfront about things like no running around inside, no food in the living room, and no touching my fragile or expensive stuff. I also told her that if there were any issues, I need to step in and handle things, and I expected her to support that. She seemed to understand, and everything was fine when she dropped them off. The first few hours went smoothly. I played a board game with Aiden and Emily, and they were on their best behavior. But then, after they'd been here for a few hours, things started to get out of hand. Aiden, especially, started to get bored. He began running around the house, climbing on furniture, and knocking things over. Emily followed suit, and before long, the house was in chaos. I tried to intervene and remind them of the rules, but they were too caught up in their own fun to listen. At one point, Aiden knocked over a vase I've had for years. It was a gift from my grandmother, and it's very sentimental to me. It shattered on the floor. I was furious. I immediately told him that he needed to stop and that he couldn't be this reckless in my home. Megan had given me the impression that her kids were well-behaved, but this was getting ridiculous. She wasn't around to supervise, and I felt like I was the one who had to play the enforcer. Later that evening, things escalated further. Aiden and Emily had taken some markers and drawn on my coffee table, which I had just recently restored. They ruined it. When I found out, I told them both that they needed to stop what they were doing, and I immediately sent them to their room to calm down. I texted Megan, telling her about the issues with the vase and the coffee table, and she responded with something along the lines of "kids will be kids, don't overreact." That did not sit well with me at all. I felt like I was being dismissed and that my boundaries weren't being respected. I understand that kids can be a handful, but this was beyond just a little mess. They were actively damaging my things, and I was upset. By the next morning, I was already starting to feel like I had made a mistake in agreeing to have them over. I was exhausted from constantly trying to manage their behavior, and I realized that I had underestimated how disruptive their presence would be. I called Megan and told her that I no longer felt comfortable keeping Aiden and Emily for the weekend. I told her that I was having a hard time with their behavior, and I felt like my house was being disrespected. Megan didn't take it well. She told me that I was overreacting and that I should just let the kids be kids. She also mentioned that I was acting as though my possessions were more important than my relationship with her kids, which really rubbed me the wrong way. She said I should have expected a bit of chaos and that I should just relax and enjoy the time with the kids. But I couldn't shake the feeling that my boundaries were being completely disregarded. Eventually, she came to pick them up early, and I was relieved. I was emotionally drained, and I felt like I had done my best to make the weekend work, but it just wasn't happening. Later that day, Megan texted me again, saying that she was disappointed in how I handled things and that I shouldn't have agreed to take the kids in the first place if I wasn't prepared to handle them. I felt bad for a bit, but I also felt like my frustration was completely valid. I understand that kids can be unpredictable, but I don't think I was unreasonable in asking for basic respect for my space. Since then, there's been some awkwardness between us. We've both tried to brush it off, but I can tell that there's some lingering tension. I'm now second-guessing whether I was too harsh or if I had the right to ask her to take the kids back early. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law's kids stay at my house after they broke my stuff? I want to maintain good relations with her, but I also don't think I was wrong to protect my belongings and my peace of mind. I'm curious to know what you all think. Would you have handled it differently? AITA for not letting my brother's fiancée bring her dog to my wedding. I, 28F, am getting married in a couple of months to my fiancée, 30M. It's been a long road to get here, and I want everything to go as smoothly as possible. The venue is booked, the dress is sorted, and most of the guest list is confirmed. The only thing that's been causing a bit of tension is my brother, Alex, 31, and his fiancée, Claire, 29. Here's the issue. Claire has a dog, and while I understand that dogs are important to some people, the problem is that Claire insists on bringing her dog to the wedding. Not only does she want to bring him, but she also wants him to be part of the ceremony, as if he's some kind of special guest. She's even suggested that the dog could wear a little tuxedo. To be honest, I've never been a huge fan of dogs in general. I'm allergic to them, and I've always preferred events to be a little more formal. My fiancé, who is a total dog lover, has tried to be diplomatic about the situation, but he's definitely on my side with this one. We want our wedding to be elegant, and having a dog involved just doesn't fit the vibe we're going for. There's also the practical issue. What if the dog gets nervous or disruptive during the ceremony or reception? I've been to weddings where pets were involved, and it just didn't go well. I don't want my special day ruined because someone's dog is acting out. I've tried to explain all of this to Claire. At first, I was very gentle. I said that while I understand how important her dog is to her, I simply didn't want animals at the wedding. It's not a pet-friendly venue, and it's not a pet-friendly event. She didn't take it well, and she immediately started getting upset, saying I was being unreasonable and that I was discriminating against her dog. I was taken aback by this reaction. She's been very persistent, and now it's turning into a bigger issue. A couple of weeks ago, she even came over with the dog to show us how well-behaved he is, saying he wouldn't cause any trouble. She said that if he could be a part of the ceremony, it would mean the world to her. I'm not going to lie, I felt incredibly uncomfortable with the situation. My house smelled like wet dog, and I could barely stop sneezing. I could feel the tension growing in the room as she kept pushing for her dog to be involved. I politely asked her to leave the dog at home for the wedding, but she didn't seem to get the hint. It felt like she was just disregarding my boundaries. I've had a few family members weigh in on this too. Some are on my side, saying that a wedding should be about the couple, and the dog would just make things more complicated. But then there are others who think I'm being too harsh. My mom says that dogs are part of the family, and that I should make an exception for Claire because she's family now too. She even suggested that we let the dog be a part of the wedding photos. My dad, who is a huge dog lover, said I was being unnecessarily uptight, and that it would be good for the dog to be there to bring a sense of joy to the event. He even joked that it would be unforgivable if we didn't let Claire's dog be involved. I've tried to keep the peace, but it feels like no matter what I do, it's never enough for Claire or my family. She's now calling me a control freak and saying that I'm being inflexible just because I want my wedding day to go as planned. I don't think I'm asking for much, just a wedding without the distraction of dog. She keeps pushing for it, and now I'm at my wit's end. I've told Alex that if Claire can't respect my decision, then she's welcome to skip the wedding. I honestly don't want that drama, but I feel like I've been more than accommodating at this point. My fiancé has been supportive of me throughout this whole ordeal, but I can tell it's stressing him out too. He doesn't want to offend anyone, but he also agrees that we don't need any pets causing unnecessary issues on our big day. But at the same time, he doesn't want to make things harder between me and my family. The whole situation has put me in a tough spot. I want to stand my ground and make sure the wedding is exactly how I envision it. But at the same time, I don't want to cause a rift between my brother and me. I know it's important to him that Claire feels included, and I do want her to be happy, but this is my wedding day. Am I being unreasonable for not letting her bring her dog? Or am I just not being flexible enough for the sake of family harmony? AITA? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she banned my daughter as her flower girl? I, 32M, have a younger sister, Kelly, 28F, who is getting married in a couple of months. Kelly and I have always had a decent relationship, but we aren't super close. Growing up, we had our share of sibling rivalry, but as adults, we've mostly stayed in touch and hung out at family gatherings. I've been married for 5 years to my wife, Anna, 30, and we have a 5-year-old daughter, Sophie. Sophie is a sweet, outgoing child who has a lot of energy and loves being around people. She's always been really close to me and Anna, but especially Anna because she's the one who spends more time with her. Sophie and I have a bit of a special bond, though, and she's always been very attached to me. So, here's where things get tricky. When Kelly started planning her wedding, she asked me to be a groomsman, which I was happy to accept. We weren't super close, but it felt like a nice gesture, and I wasn't about to turn her down. The problem started when Kelly asked me if Sophie could be the flower girl. I thought it would be a great opportunity for Sophie to be part of something so special, and I was really excited to have her involved. However, Kelly's response caught me off guard. She told me that while she'd initially considered having Sophie as the flower girl, she decided to go in a different direction because she didn't want a child involved in her wedding. I was shocked. I asked her why, and she said that she wanted everything to be elegant, and that having a young child in such a formal setting wouldn't fit her vision for the day. She mentioned that she wanted mature, responsible people in the wedding party, and a kid wouldn't add to that atmosphere. At first, I thought she was joking, but then she was very clear that she had already chosen someone else for the flower girl role, her best friend's daughter, who's around 10 years old. I tried to explain that Sophie was very well-behaved and would be perfect for the role, but Kelly was adamant. She even said that she felt like my request was putting pressure on her and that it wasn't a big deal considering she had already picked someone else. This felt really hurtful to me. I understand weddings are a personal event, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Kelly's refusal to include Sophie was more than just about a wedding vision. It seemed like she didn't want a reminder of me there in the form of my daughter, which stung a lot. I didn't want to start drama, so I tried to just accept it, but I kept thinking about it, and it started bothering me more and more. I eventually talked to Anna about it, and she was just as upset as I was. She felt that Kelly was being unnecessarily exclusive and dismissive of Sophie, especially since we'd always tried to support her in the past. Anna suggested that we just attend the wedding and let Sophie be a part of the day, even if it wasn't as the flower girl. But I kept coming back to the fact that Kelly had actively chosen someone else's child over my own, and I felt it was a slap in the face. After a few days of thinking about it, I made the decision to send Kelly a message explaining that I would not be attending her wedding. I told her that I was hurt by her decision to exclude Sophie, and that I didn't think I could be part of a celebration where my daughter wasn't even considered. I told her it wasn't just about Sophie being the flower girl. It was about how it made me feel as her father to be told my daughter wasn't good enough for the role. I also told her that I loved her, but I didn't think I could put on a happy face and pretend everything was fine when I was so upset. Kelly was furious. She called me immediately and screamed at me, accusing me of making it all about me instead of celebrating her big day. She said I was being selfish and that I was ruining her wedding by refusing to attend because of a small thing like the flower girl. She also said that I was overreacting and that this was just a wedding, so I shouldn't be making it a big deal. She told me that I could either get over myself and come to the wedding or that we were done. I was taken aback by her reaction, but I stood my ground. I told her that I didn't feel comfortable attending an event where my daughter was not respected, and that if she couldn't understand why this was hurtful to me, then we might need some space. The conversation ended with her hanging up on me, and I haven't heard from her since. Now, my family is divided. My parents think I should have just let it go and gone to the wedding for the sake of peace. My sister's friends are all on her side, saying I'm being dramatic and unreasonable. Some of Anna's friends agree with me, though, and think Kelly was wrong for excluding Sophie without any real reason. I've even had a few people tell me I should have just let Sophie attend the wedding as a guest, but I feel like that's not the point. I feel like I've made the right choice in standing up for my daughter, but I'm second-guessing myself. I know weddings are important, but I feel like Kelly's decision to not have Sophie involved was more about her personal biases than any real concern for the wedding. Maybe I'm just too sensitive about it, but I've never felt more disrespected by her in my life. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she banned my daughter as her flower girl. AITA for not allowing my sister-in-law to bring her emotional support dog to my wedding. I, 28F, am getting married in a few months to my fiancé, Jake, 30M. We're having a relatively small, intimate wedding with around 50 people. It's going to be in a venue that's both indoor and outdoor, with a beautiful garden, and we're keeping the decor minimal to focus on the setting and the ceremony itself. Now, here's where the issue starts. My sister-in-law, Megan, 34F, has an emotional support dog. I know it sounds a bit strange, but Megan has been dealing with anxiety for a few years, and her dog has been a huge comfort for her. She brings the dog everywhere, and I mean everywhere. I met the dog a couple of times, and while it's a well-behaved dog, it's still a dog, and I'm not particularly fond of having animals in indoor spaces like weddings. But I figured that since Megan is family, I'd let it slide if she brought the dog to the wedding, as long as it was in the outdoor area where the ceremony and reception will be held. The problem started when Megan started demanding that the dog be allowed inside the indoor portion of the venue, including during the ceremony. She's been insisting that it's necessary for her to have the dog with her at all times because of her anxiety. She told me that the dog helps her calm down and that she wouldn't be able to enjoy the wedding or handle the stress of the event without it. I get that she's anxious, and I'm not trying to minimize that, but there are certain things I just can't compromise on, and one of them is having a dog present during our wedding ceremony. I'm honestly not comfortable with the dog being in the indoor space for a number of reasons. First, I planned a formal wedding, and I don't want to deal with the logistical issues of having an animal around. There's also the fact that weddings typically involve people who may not be as comfortable with dogs, and some guests have allergies. Secondly, I've already paid for professional catering, and I don't want to risk the dog getting into the food, and I don't think it's appropriate for a dog to be so close to the food and drink. Jake and I discussed the issue, and he's on the same page as me. He thinks the dog should stay outside and not disrupt the ceremony or reception. We also both agreed that we'd provide a quiet area for Megan if she needs to step away and spend some time with the dog. So, when Megan raised the issue again and asked if the dog could come inside for the ceremony, I told her politely that we wouldn't be able to accommodate the dog in the indoor spaces. I explained that we would make sure she had a comfortable spot outside where she and the dog could relax if she needed it. I also said that I would be happy to discuss other ways to support her anxiety during the day, but that the wedding ceremony itself needed to remain formal and free of distractions. I also emphasized that we love her and want her to be a part of the day, but we just didn't think it would be appropriate to have the dog inside. Megan took this extremely poorly. She was really upset, saying that I was being unsympathetic to her struggles and that I was prioritizing the wedding aesthetic over her mental health. She said that I should have known she wouldn't be able to attend a wedding without the dog, and that it wasn't fair for me to force her to make a choice between coming to my wedding and leaving her dog behind. She even said that if I couldn't accommodate the dog, she wouldn't come at all. Now, I know Megan well enough to know that she tends to be dramatic when things don't go her way, but I was still taken aback by how harshly she reacted. She started texting family members and friends about it, claiming that I was being a bad sister-in-law and that I was selfish. A few of them reached out to me, saying they understood where Megan was coming from, but that I was well within my rights to have the wedding the way I envisioned it. A couple of others, though, sided with Megan, saying that I should have been more flexible given her mental health struggles. I'm feeling conflicted now. I don't want to alienate my family, and I don't want to start drama right before my wedding, but I also don't feel like I should have to change the fundamental nature of my wedding just to accommodate one person's emotional support animal. It's not like I'm banning dogs altogether. I'm just asking for the ceremony to be dog-free, which seems reasonable, right? I don't know if I'm being too harsh or if Megan is being unreasonable. I've been told that maybe I should just let it go and let the dog in, but I'm really uncomfortable with the idea. Am I the asshole for not allowing her emotional support dog in my wedding? AITA for not letting my sister-in-law stay with us after a breakup? So a bit of backstory. I, 32M, am married to my wife, Claire, 30F, and we've been together for 7 years. Claire's sister, Emily, 27F, is a really good person, but we've had some tension in the past, mostly due to her lack of boundaries and the way she sometimes tries to insert herself into our relationship. A few months ago, Emily went through a tough breakup with her long-term boyfriend. I don't know all the details, but from what I've heard, it wasn't a healthy relationship, and she's been really struggling with it. I feel bad for her. No one deserves to go through that kind of heartbreak. But there's one problem. She wants to move in with us, at least temporarily, while she gets back on her feet. This isn't the first time Emily has asked to stay with us. About a year ago, she came to visit for a weekend, and it turned into her staying with us for a full month. It was a stressful time. She has a tendency to overstep, and Claire, while being a great sister, doesn't always set clear boundaries. It ended up causing a lot of tension in our home. I wasn't comfortable with her being there for so long, especially since Claire and I had a routine that Emily was disrupting. Eventually, she left, and things went back to normal, but we both agreed we'd be more careful about having her stay with us in the future. Fast forward to a couple of weeks ago. Emily called Claire and asked if she could move in for a few weeks. She said she needed space to heal, get her head straight, and figure out what she was doing with her life. Claire and I talked about it, and I told her that I really wasn't comfortable with it. To be clear, it wasn't that I didn't care about Emily. I do, but having her stay with us would mean sacrificing our privacy, our routines, and I was worried it would lead to more tension, just like last time. Claire didn't take my concerns well at first. She felt bad for Emily and thought it would be cruel to deny her a place to stay when she was clearly going through a rough time. I get that, but I tried explaining that I didn't feel comfortable with the idea of Emily staying here again. I reminded Claire of the issues we had last time and how our relationship was strained for a while after that extended stay. Claire was upset, saying that I was being cold and unsympathetic and that I wasn't putting family first. I still wasn't comfortable with it, and I told Claire I didn't think I could go through that again. I suggested that maybe Emily could look for an Airbnb or stay with a friend, or even rent a short-term apartment. I didn't think it was fair for her to disrupt our lives, especially when she'd already stayed with us for an extended period before. Claire didn't agree with me and ended up having a huge argument about it. We were both really emotional because we care about Emily, but we couldn't see eye to eye on this. The argument continued for a few days, and eventually, Claire started to pull away from me a little. She felt like I didn't support her family, and that I was being selfish. I kept trying to explain my perspective, but it didn't seem to matter. She even brought up how close I was to my own family, and how I always make time for them when they need me, but I wasn't willing to do the same for hers. I was hurt by this because I felt like my feelings and boundaries were being disregarded. At this point, things were still pretty tense, and Emily kept texting Claire asking if she'd figured things out. Claire would tell her that we were still discussing it, but it was obvious that Emily was getting frustrated. Finally, after a couple of weeks of back and forth, I told Claire I just wasn't comfortable with Emily staying here, and that if she really felt that strongly about it, she could go stay with Emily instead. That didn't go over well. Claire was upset, but after a few more days of talking it out, she agreed that maybe it wasn't the best idea for Emily to stay with us after all. We agreed that Emily could come over to visit, but not to live with us. I thought we'd reached a compromise, but Emily was devastated when she found out. She called Claire, and I could hear the conversation from the other room. Emily was crying, saying that it wasn't fair and that she had no one else to turn to. She even said that Claire was choosing me over her and that it felt like we didn't care about her. Claire was visibly upset after the call and said that Emily was really hurt, but that we had to stick to our boundaries. Now, a week later, Emily is still mad at both of us. Claire feels torn because she wants to be there for her sister, but she also knows that she needs to respect our relationship and our boundaries. She said she's disappointed in me for not being more understanding, but she hasn't outright said I'm in the wrong. I've been feeling guilty too, because I don't want to be the bad guy, but at the same time, I feel like I'm just trying to protect our home and our relationship. I've always tried to be supportive of Emily, but I've reached a point where I just don't think it's healthy for her to lean on us so much. She's an adult, and while I sympathize with her, I think she needs to figure things out on her own without putting so much pressure on Claire and me. So, AITA for not letting my sister-in-law stay with us after a breakup? Or should I have just sucked it up and allowed it to happen for the sake of family? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.